evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the very first episode of this year of the Road Trip Rundown. Danny, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because it means we haven't really gone anywhere, but folks...
Well, we haven't gone anywhere new.
True. But folks, we have put this off as long as we can. We petitioned Trump to close
As Thanos once said, I am inevitable.
Even Trump closing the border could not stop this. Yes, folks, we are finally talking about Danny Miller's trip to Europe. You can see I'm celebrating the occasion by wearing my...
We don't even have to shoehorn the comment in to the show like we always try to, or like I always try to, because the entire show is going to be about it.
Oh, good Lord. I know, folks. I know. This is going to be... Woo!
And it doesn't end here.
No, we're doing 2 shows, because if you like this one, you're probably going to like the next one, too.
And you'll probably like the next one better if you're like Andy, where you like steel coasters better than wood coasters. And Andy, we're actually going to do 4 shows because we're going to have to do follow-ups after the trip. So we're going to be talking a whole lot of Europe here.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So here's what we decided to do, because we're going to be as obviously most of you know, I am heading to Europe next month for the first 2 weeks of August.
What?
Yes. But you know, we've talked about it and we've mentioned it here, but we haven't really gone over where all we're going because that wasn't set in stone when we first booked the trip and knew about the trip.
Perchance was that because we didn't care?
Possibly. There is a chance. So here's what we're going to do. Historically, and the way we did it for my Texas trip last year and the Pacific Northwest trip, and we did it for a trip of yours as well last year. We did this a couple times. Yes, that's right. So we typically went down and did the top 5 coasters that we are most looking forward to that were new to us. Now, obviously, I've never been to any of these parks that we're going to, so all of these rides will be new to me. So we'll go through. What we decided to do is to split it up into wood and steel, because over the course of this 2-week trip, we're going to be riding close to 100 roller coasters, and it didn't seem right to just do a singular top 5. So what we're actually going to do is...
Really? Because the stuff you've been talking about seems like you could boil it down to 5 coasters.
No, there's some pretty good ones here. But so here's what we decided to do. Andy, you and I talked about this. I took a look.
But I'm going to start right now, Danny. None are better than the collection found in one Sandusky, Ohio. So
well, that may be the case. So what we're gonna do is we decided. I looked at the list of rides and the ones that I'm excited for, and kind of tried to put them in an order. And we looked at kind of where the cutoff was of interesting rides to talk about, and we determined that we're gonna break it down to a top 5 wood, which we're gonna do tonight, and then a top 10 of the steel. Now we're only riding 8 or 9 wood coasters, and it shouldn't be a surprise once you hear all the parks we're going to which 5 are there, but the order might be interesting. The steel coasters is a whole new ball game when we go through all the parks, because there are a lot of rides that we've talked about in the Thrilling 32 and the Ride Wearer Choice Awards for many, many years. There's a lot of rides that we've talked about in terms of the Golden Ticket Awards, when we've talked about those before, and other awards that go on, the Mitch Hawker poll. So there are a lot of rides that we've mentioned before here and that we've talked about, and it's always been, well, neither of us have ridden that ride, so we don't know. And there may also be a few new for 2019 rides coming into play over on the steel side of things. So we'll get to that.
Can I let the people down easy though right now? Can I
sure.
let them down? That unfortunately Liza Bergbanen is not on this trip.
No, Liza Bergbanen is not on this trip here. We will not be going to Sweden. But that is a good segue, Andy.
Oh, no.
Go in to the list of parks that we will actually be doing. Okay. So you'll know what the you'll know kind of what the
you might see me on the phone throughout this. It's not because I'm not paying attention.
No, it is because you're not paying
It's
attention.
because I'm researching the rides you're talking about.
Okay.
God knows I will not know any of these. So
Right. Well, and that's okay because you don't care about Europe at all. So
not at all.
I would expect nothing less.
Not since World War II is the last time I cared when we went back-to-back champs, right?
That's right. That's right.
Still haven't received that thank you note from France, though. So.
Or the Brits, which
seriously.
celebrated 4th of July last week by beating them in the Women's World Cup.
Yeah.
So we won again.
See, no, really, I have RCDB on my phone, so I'm not.
There you go.
So I'm not researching West Virginia girls or anything like that. Or
no. We've done enough of that this evening. All right. So let's jump into it. So like I said, we're going over there for 2 weeks. The second week is going to be with the coaster crew as part of the European vacation. But the first week, we're going to kind of be doing our own thing. And
not to be topped by the Vegas vacation. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about movies.
Yeah. I mean, talk about gambling. Anyways, so we'll actually be flying into Frankfurt, Germany. But the first park we'll be going to is Tato Park, and just outside of Dublin, Ireland. People don't really know Tato Park for much outside of Cuchulainn.
Yeah, I know that one. Don't worry.
So we will be heading there. That will be our first stop there. Then from there we will be heading to Amsterdam in the Netherlands and going to Walibi, Holland. And then our next stop will be the Hamburg area of Germany, where we will be visiting Heide Park and also Hansa Park. Those are the 4 parks that we're doing on our own. We will also be going to the, and again, forgive me for some of these pronunciations if I get them wrong here on some of these park and ride names, the Kranger Kirmes Fun Fair in Germany. People may not know what that is. People know Oktoberfest much better. But Kranger Kirmes is where Olympia Looping will be. We found out about a month and a half ago that Olympia Looping will be at this fair, which is going on at the time that in this 2-week span where we're over there. It's actually going to be part of the coaster crew the first day with the coaster crew as well. We're going to Movie Park Germany on the first day. We will be leaving Movie Park Germany about 2/3 of the way through the day and going to the fair. We're also going to try and do the fair for a few hours on a different day on our own before we meet up with the coaster crew to maybe do, in addition to Olympia Looping, they have a few other coasters. They've got some dark rides. They've got some neat looking flat rides. So we're going to try and do some of that stuff as well. But Olympia Looping is kind of the main attraction there.
I'm going to laugh real hard when Olympia Looping goes to Cedar Point next year. So.
Well, you know what? Some people, nobody on this show, but some people would count that as 2 credits because it was relocated.
Yeah, some people would. You.
So I said not on this show. So Movie Park Germany is our first stop with the coaster crew, and we'll also be going back to Kranger Kirmes again. Don't know on the pronunciation there. Forgive me. I'm Pennsylvania Dutch. I'm not German.
Yeah.
So. After that day, we will be heading to Efteling. We are staying on site there. We're spending a full day at Efteling, which is well known as one of the most beautiful parks in Europe.
Strange fun fact: I was at Carowinds, and this family of like 4 had an Efteling bag on them, and I'm like,
really?
That's strange. I would never have guessed. Just like a random family of 4, they looked like they were like. Like they didn't look like European or anything like that. Like
that's interesting. Well, Efteling is very popular over there and is well known as one of the best family parks. They have a very well-rounded collection. They have several highly themed dark rides. Symbolica, of which is the newest one there that just opened a year or 2 ago. Droomvlucht, I think, is the other one that's there, which is translates to Dream Flight. It's a suspended dark ride. Which kind of takes you through a dream fairy world. They've got
Peter Pan. I've been on one of those, Danny, at Disneyland. It's called Peter Pan.
Similar, not dissimilar from that.
They've got like we've never been. We don't have those in America.
Well, yeah, but I mean, typically you think you're sitting in a car and going around. That Symbolica is a trackless dark ride too, which is pretty cool looking. So there's 4 or 5 dark rides there. The coaster there, Baron 1898, is the newest one that people probably know there. They also have the Racing GCI, Joris and the Drac. That's some of the things that you might know Efteling for. From there, we will be going to Toverland, also in the Netherlands, part of a indoor-outdoor combo park. Just built a B&M wing coaster called Phoenix, which we will have ERT on, and they're also well known for Troy, their big GCI there. Those are the two big coasters at Toverland there. On the same day as Toverland, we'll be going to Bobbejaanland in Belgium, which we've talked about here not too long ago. They just opened up a few weeks ago their new Gerstlauer launched Eurofighter called Fury, which is the forward-backwards ride. So people will know that one. That park isn't particularly well known for any standout coasters. Fury is probably their biggest standout coaster in the lineup. But they've got 9 or 10 of them, so they've got quantity. I'm not sure about quality, but we'll see on there. The next day we'll be going to Wallaby, Belgium, which is the smaller in terms of coasters. Of the two Wallaby parks. Wallaby Holland is where Untamed, the new RMC, just opened up a couple weeks ago. That'll be
You have to go crazy when people talk about that, right?
Well, yeah, right. That's we'll see. We'll see how good that is. That one looks like it might be pretty good. So yeah. We'll get a chance there. Wallaby Belgium, a little bit smaller there. We hear some good things about that park as well, both of the Wallaby parks. So we'll be getting both of those. From there, we'll be going to Phantasialand outside of Cologne.
A real park. Now, and I've wanted to get to for a long time.
Yeah, Terran is the big ride that people really, really talk about recently. Black Mamba as well. Vinjas, their twin spinning indoor coasters and their Mine Train Colorado Adventure usually gets pretty good reviews. The non-coaster ride there, Chiapas, the forwards backwards log flume there, very, very heavily themed. We'll be staying on site at Phantasialand as well. We'll be staying on site at quite a few of these parks. A lot of them do have resorts. Efteling, we're staying on site. Phantasialand, we're staying on site. We'll be staying on site at Europa at the end of the trip as well. From Phantasialand on Thursday, we will be doing 2 parks. We'll be starting at Holiday Park with ERT on Expedition G-Force. And we'll be spending the first part of our day at Holiday Park.
There's much any other rides there. I think they have one other coaster now.
No, and I was looking at a map of Holiday Park the other day, and that park is very, very small. There is not much to that park at all.
They should just call it Expedition G-Force Park.
Well, pretty much. I mean, they've got Sky Scream, which is the Skyrocket 2 in the back of the park, and then I think they have a kiddie coaster, and they might have 1 or 2 other rides. But generally, that is a family, targeted at family demographic park. So to have one of the best steel coasters in the world, just sort of like Holiday World, just those rides sort of seem out of place. But we'll see. We'll get to ride Expedition G-Force on the trip, hopefully there. And from there we'll be going to Trips Drill, which is known to have a lot of Gerstlauer rides. The very first, what Gerstlauer calls their bobsled style roller coaster, which is
not to be confused with a bobsled coaster that is not a roller coaster.
Right. You would actually count this as a credit.
This is actually a roller coaster.
Some people confuse them for Wild Mouse coasters, but they're sort of more. I don't know how you describe them. A lot of times they're terrain style rides. They have the Wild Mouse style cars that you would have, where they're just the 2 benches. But they seem to do them with some high themes and some interesting elements. Some are indoor. Movie Park Germany has one themed to Van Helsing's factory, which will be kind of cool. The original one, their trip show, is called Jacente Sao, and then their newer Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster, Caracho, which is looks sort of like a launched version of a Monster style ride. It's been compared to Monster a little bit. But it is a launch version, so we'll see how that turns out there. And then we'll be finishing up with 2 days in a row at Europa Park. We'll be staying on site at the Hotel Coliseo, I believe. I think that's where we're staying. Don't quote me on that, but we'll be staying on site there at Europa Park for 2 days. We will have a tour of the park before opening on the one day. We'll also have a Q&A with
gotta be careful before it opens, though. Europa
yeah, right.
Known to go up in flames before opening, so you got to be careful on that tour.
No, right. So we don't want to be doing any of that. You joked about it there, but the new ride that is replacing the now defunct Pirates in Batavia ride will not be ready until next year. But they will be working on that. They still have they have a lot of the areas that were closed off from the fire last year reopened, but that new ride will not be ready for this year. It'll be ready next year. So if you're going over to Europa Park next year, then hopefully that'll be ready for you. So that is the lineup of parks. I don't know exactly how many that is. It's in the, I think it's like 12 to 15, depending on how you count the fare and everything. But so that's sort of the lineup and the plan here. So it's somewhere between like 85 and 100 coasters that we're going to get, depending on, things might not be operating, something might be down, we might hit some problems with weather. Who knows? A lot can happen over the course of 2 weeks, but that's sort of the range that we're looking in terms of number of coasters that we're going to be riding. So,
well, it's
with all that said,
it's unfortunate that you're not going during Haunt, because you went to England during Haunt and you got to experience a little bit of that, especially at Alton Towers. And I've been told that Europa's Haunt, Traumatica, is actually really outstanding for more than one reason. Well, I won't get into it.
And a big reason that we went over to the UK in late October, when we did, was because that's when they do their short break or half term,
that's a little
which is sort of their fall break for the school.
Like
there we go.
That's like right up your alley, Danny Miller.
That's good stuff right there.
I'm just going to say this to you. Last year, I don't know if they're doing it again, but last year they did partner with Playboy a little bit for their Haunt. So,
well, maybe when you decide that you want to go to Europa Park, I'll go back over with you, and we can go for. When we went to the UK, it was decided to go at that time of year because that's, like I said, that's their half term, what they call over there. That's their fall break for the schools. So the parks are actually open during the week. And they're open for long. In the summer, a lot of the parks in the UK are only open from like 10 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m., even in July and August in the dead of summer. And in October, especially during that half-term week, the parks are open from 10 a.m. to 9 or 10 at night, which is unusual. They only do that during that time of year. So we actually did that to maximize our time at each of those parks. It's certainly a 10 to 5 p.m. day at Alton Towers would not be enough to do everything that you would like. And certainly not enough to do any re-rides of any sort because of how big a park it is. 10 to 9 p.m. with Cut the Lines was much more manageable. A lot of the parks that we're going to are open from like 10 to 7, 10 to 8. I think there's one or two smaller parks that are 10 to 6. I think Europa is 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the 2 days we're there. So we'll have 11 hours both days. Phantasialand, I believe, is 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. But then since we're staying on site, we have hotel guest ERT after the park closes on a few select attractions. We also have some ERT sessions mixed in here. We do have ERT on Fury when we go to Bobbejaanland Land. We'll have Phoenix ERT on Toverland, Expedition G-Force. At Movie Park, we'll have morning ERT on Star Trek, Operation Enterprise. So we do have a fair bit of ERT, and we also have cut the line passes at a lot of the parks. So we should be able to ride most of the rides that we hope to over the course of this. So I figured we'd go through all the parks on this since we're only doing 5 wood coasters. We'll jump right into the steel rankings when we do the steel show. So we'll go from 5 up to 1 for the wood coasters here. And like I said, we're only riding 8 or 9 wood coasters, and a couple of them are don't get such good reviews. Bandit and Movie Park Germany is widely considered to be one of the worst wood coasters out there. What's the other one? Loop Garou at Wallaby, Belgium, I believe, is also not thought to be very good at all. The one at Tripsdrill, what's that called? Mammut is another one that doesn't get very, very good reviews. But there are 5 wood coasters on the trip that do seem to get pretty high praise from the folks who ride them. So we'll start with number 5, and I'm going with Colossus at Haida Park. And this is right. And this ride just reopened this year. They just did a big retrack of it. They added a little bit of theming to it. And here's my reason why this is number 5. Very similar to El Toro, same style of ride. People know I am not the biggest El Toro fan in the world, right? That's no secret here.
That's an understatement.
So I'm putting expectations for Colossus low because I know that I do not rate El Toro as highly as many other folks. So I'm putting Colossus at number 5 because I don't want to have too high of expectations. If it comes in and it's as good as El Toro, I think that's fine. If it happens to be better than El Toro, it's one of my complaints with El Toro is that the second half, there's really that one good crossover airtime hill, and then the turns really don't do much for me. Colossus is much more of an out and back. It does have some bunny hills on the return run. It does have a helix there mixed in. So maybe it'll have a little bit more instances of airtime, maybe not quite as intense as El Toro, but El Toro's got the 3 big hills, and then you've got the one good crossover hill, and that's kind of it in terms of airtime. Some of the best airtime anywhere, but there's not that many instances of it. My hope is that Colossus will have more instances of it, even if it's not quite as strong. The fact that there's more quantity there, maybe that'll sort of make up for the lower quality airtime. So that's why I'm putting Colossus at number 5. Keep expectations low, and hopefully it will exceed them. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or not. We've talked about El Toro and my thoughts on that many times here.
Well, Colossus is one that, a lot of people were wondering what exactly was going to happen with it. We had speculated that it might be RMC'd. They went back and they retracked the whole thing and spent a lot of money to do that. So I'm hoping that it delivers a pretty good ride for the amount of money that they poured into it. They got they got that whole new theme on it with the big giant monster on it now with the the track that goes off. They have brand new trains on it as well. So they've dropped quite a bit of money here into Colossus. So we shall see.
Yeah, hopefully it's worth it there. Moving on to number 4 now. Number 4, I'm going with a ride I already mentioned here, Joris and the Drac, which translates to George and the Dragon. That is the GCI racing dueling coaster at Efteling. Now, our friend the Beard Man, he actually went over to Europe for a few days over his spring break back in April, and he went to Efteling for part of a day, and he already has ridden this ride, and his report back was it's sort of Lightning Racer meets Prowler. Now, you and I are both big Prowler fans, and I think you and I kind of have the same opinion on Lightning Racer, where it's a good ride, not an outstanding ride.
Yeah.
So if you were to take the way I interpret that is, if you take a ride that's a little bit ground-hugging, agile, like Prowler, which is what this ride looks to be, and you put in the racing dueling aspect that Lightning Racer has, then that ought to be a pretty good ride. He said that he really enjoyed it. So that's why I'm putting this one ahead of Colossus, because I'm a big fan of Prowler. I'm a reasonable fan of Lightning Racer. So if that logic holds and that's what this ride turns out to be, then I'm going to enjoy it quite a bit, hopefully.
Yeah, Prowler's a fine roller coaster anytime that you can, replicate that. The only thing I've ever been on that came close to Prowler was Mystic Timbers. And that's always the debate, Mystic Timbers versus Prowler. And here you get a racing coaster that, might follow those same types of, layouts. I think that's real exciting.
Yeah, I think so. And, staying on the GCI bandwagon here, number 3, I'm going to go with Vodon Timber Coaster. Now, this might surprise some people that it's not a little higher, and I'm going to explain why. This one might be number 1 or number 2. However, there are a few things that I've heard about this ride. It is one of, if not the largest GCIs ever built. I think maybe next to a few over there in China that recently opened, this is one of the largest. Couple things I've heard about this. It uses urethane wheels, last I heard, to kind of reduce noise. So because of that, it's not quite as long as you would think a ride that big. It's only about 3,200 feet long, which is about the same size as some of the smaller GCIs. So this being a bigger ride, you would maybe think it would be a little bit longer. It is not. Supposedly because those urethane wheels burn off the speed a little bit more quickly. Also been told that it's not crazy intense ejector airtime. It's more floater airtime. Now on the GCIs like Mystic Timbers, Prowler, Gold Striker, in particular, there is some very good amounts of strong airtime on those rides.
Mm-hmm.
The rides, some of the earlier GCIs like your Lightning Racers, Thunderhead, those types of rides have some more of the floater airtime. So if the airtime's like that, it's still going to be really good. But because I've heard, it's almost like people are a little apologetic for Vodon Timber Coaster. And the other thing with Vodon here is that a lot of people who vote in the Thrilling 32 over the years have been to Europa Park because we have rides in Europa Park. And Vodon Timber Coaster has always kind of been around the 20 mark. It's never been in the top 10. I think it's been as high as 14 one year, but it's always kind of been down in the 20s. So I'm kind of using the Thrilling 32 as a little bit of my gauge here. Vodon was higher than Joris and the Drac, both, the last couple years where they've both been eligible to be ranked. So that's kind of where I'm pulling this from here. And I'm using a little bit of that feedback from people who have ridden Vodon Timber Coaster, that it's not really negative. It's just sort of like, well, if I could improve it, I would do this. Like I would make it longer, give it steel wheels so it maintains the speed, make the airtime a little bit stronger, a little bit more intense. So for that reason, I'm only putting Vodon Timber Coaster at number 3, but I'm going to trust the Thrilling 32 that it's still better than Joris and the Draw.
Well, Vodon has always been one of those Golden Ticket Award favorites. I don't think it's, like you said, it's never really done well in the Thrilling 32. People talk about it, I think, mainly because it's at Europa, which if you've been to Europe, that's probably one of the parks that you want to go to or have been to. So yeah, I think I'm with you on that, where it just doesn't, it might not live up to that hype that I think some people have given it.
Yeah, I think so. And actually, a friend of ours from our Coaster Radio group is actually over in Europe right now, and I was just at Europa Park today and rode Vodon, and he said it's his 3rd favorite GCI. Now, I didn't bother to ask what the 2 that he puts ahead of it, but I think he's been out to Gold Striker. I think he's been on Mystic Timbers. So I would think that maybe those are 2 of the rides. I know he's been on Thunderhead. I think he's maybe been on Renegade as well. So I would say that maybe a couple of those might be candidates. But to know that he likes at least 2 of those better than Vodon, I don't think I expect Vodon to fall into my top 10 wood coaster list. Top 20 maybe for sure. I think that's doable. But top 10, I mean, I've been on a lot of wood coasters. That top 10 is very hard to break into. So we'll see if it's my 3rd favorite GCI, it'll be kind of right around that 10 to 12 mark, because that's where I have rides like Thunderhead, Renegade, because I have Gold Striker and Mystic Timbers a little bit higher. Prowler, Renegade, Thunderhead are kind of right all in that mix there. So we'll see on that one. Number 2, I'm going with Cuculin at Tato Park there for a few reasons. Now, someone I know had just gone over a few months ago and rode Cuculin, and they were not huge fans of it, mainly because of the Timberliners. But their complaint was that the Timberliners vibrated and sort of shook around a little bit. Now, the only big ride I've been on with the Timberliners is Hades 360. And I didn't mind what Hades 360 did. And Hades 360 was also running on an old track bed. QQlin was only built a few years ago. So if it's broken in a little bit and it's a little bit rattly, I'm not going to mind that. The videos I've seen, the pictures I've seen, looks like there should be a lot of airtime. It looks like it should be a nice fast ride. It should maintain its speed most of the way through. It looks like it does for the most part. We'll see how those Timberliners perform on a big ride that was designed for them. This will kind of be, between Wooden Warrior, Rorosaurus, Oscar's Wacky Taxi, Kentucky Flyer, Switchback. Those are all real little rides that were designed to have the Timberliners. Hades 360 was a retrofit, so this will be the first big ride that I get to ride with the Timberliners that was designed to have them. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this ride. It looks like it's a lot of fun. It looks like there should be a lot of airtime, maybe some good laterals in there. I know a couple people who've ridden it and said they really liked it. Again, this is a ride that I think 2 years ago was in the Thrilling 32. Don't think it had enough riders last year, but 2 years ago, and it was right around that 20 mark, right where Vodon Timber Coaster was. So I kind of debated between this ride and Vodon for 2 and 3. I kind of knew what number 1 was going to be, but 2 and 3, this was the biggest debate I had, and I settled on QQlin at number 2.
Yeah, that's like, you're a big GCI fan though, so that's like, and I know they're both GCIs, but this or no, this is not a GCI. This is a Gravity.
This is the Gravity Group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that being said, you're a huge fan of big wooden roller coasters, and it having that airtime. Like, we've watched some POVs. We've sat down and watched POVs of this a number of different times. And you always seem to come away thinking that that's a really good ride. And I don't think you've ever sat down watching the Vodon POVs in the same way that you do QQlin.
Vodon Timber Coaster looks like it is a fantastic ride. I can see a lot of moments on that ride where I can see where the airtime is. I can see where the speed is. There's a couple tunnels there. I can see how both of these rides are fantastic rides. If we want to compare the stats, QQlin is 3,590. It's got a height of 105, top speed of 56 miles an hour. The drop is 65 degrees. It's a 2-minute, 45-second ride, and it's got, according to RCDB, has 19 airtime moments. So that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And it has a couple tunnels and 115-degree overbank turn towards the beginning of the ride. So, that's a lot of interesting elements there. Vodon is a little bit shorter, 34.45. So it's about, 150 feet shorter, 131 feet high, top speed of 62 miles an hour. So Vodon a little bit taller, a little bit faster, but a little bit shorter. 3 minutes, 25 seconds. Vodon looks to be more heavily themed with the trains, goes through some tunnels. It interacts with one of the water coasters, interacts with Blue Fire, has a couple of themed tunnels. So, we'll kind of see there. These rides are very, very different. QQlin is kind of just plopped out in the middle of the field there in Ireland, whereas Vodon is heavily themed, which has always weighted a little bit with me. We'll have to see. I'm really interested to do the recap show on the wood coasters, not because I think the top 5 is going to be any different in terms of what rides are there. I think it's just going to be the shuffling of the order.
Yeah.
So moving on to number 1 here, it shouldn't be a big surprise because it hasn't come up yet. I mentioned it already, and you sort of alluded to it, me being a big GCI fan. And I'm going back to the Thrilling 32 here because in this last year's Thrilling 32, it was the highest ranked wood coaster of any of the ones we're going to ride on this trip, and that is Troy at Toverland. This has been, I actually have a piece of Troy on my shelf back there behind me. I've got one of the running boards from the lead car that I won at an ACE event many, many years ago. This is a ride that I've been wanting to ride for many, many years. This is one that a lot of people do say is one of, if not the best wooden coaster in Europe. And we're hitting a lot of the well-known wood coasters in Europe on this trip. So I'm really excited for this one. And again, if I'm to look at some of the stats here, very similar to QQlin's stats. but it's GCI, 3,534, so almost the exact same length. The height is 104 and a half, which is within a foot of QQlin, 54 miles an hour, a minute 50. But it is that GCI style Millennium Flyer trains. It also has an IMA score soundtrack, from what I understand. Just looking at the layout here, it's very twisted. A lot of big drops, which is something I like. The reason that I give the nod to Gold Striker over Mystic Timbers on my list of favorite GCIs is because Gold Striker has some of the big swooping turns and consequently some big drops. Mystic Timbers is very low to the ground, has some great air time, but after that first drop and maybe the second drop doesn't really have another big drop anywhere in the layout. Gold Striker has 4 or 5 big drops where you come out of the turns. Troy is very similar, seems to have some swooping turnarounds, some good airtime hills, some good speed hills mixed in here as well. So I'm really looking forward to this. In terms of, do any of these rides crack my wood top 10? I don't know if I have that expectation for any of them. I can honestly say that I don't know if I expect any of them to crack my top 10 wood list, because for that you've got to beat rides like
Blue Streak.
Like you're funny. But for that you've got to beat rides like Outlaw Run, Lightning Rod, Mystic Timbers, Rampage, Prowler, Boardwalk Bullet. And I mean, those are the types of rides that I have in my top 10. And then, Gold Striker, Voyage, Phoenix, those types of rides as well. I don't know if any of these rides are better than any of those that I just mentioned. I don't know. Obviously, I haven't ridden them. I'm going to find out. But, I mean, I could see Troy being on the scale of like a Renegade or, a Prowler. Troy obviously is much different than Prowler. Jorce and the Drock is probably a better comparison to Prowler, just looking at the two. But if Troy is as good as Renegade, I'm going to very much enjoy it. I'm not going to be disappointed with that at all. But that's not quite going to be in my top 10. Top 15, sure. And I think that's fine. We'll talk about when we get to the steel coasters in the next episode. There are some rides in the steel list that I would expect to be in my steel top 10 and might even be disappointments if they don't make my steel top 10. We'll talk about those. There's a couple there that might be considerations there. But in terms of the wood list, don't know if my top 10 is going to look any different after this trip. It might slightly. The top 20 might look very different for sure. I would expect a few of these rides to maybe be top 20, top 25 for me. But generally speaking, that's the order. Again, number 5, Colossus at Hyde Park. Number 4, I'm going with Jorce and the Drock at Efteling. Number 3, Vodon Timber Coaster at Europa Park. Number 2, QQlin at Tato Park. And my most anticipated wood coaster on this trip is Troy at Toverland.
Well, and that's quite the list there. And I think you've said it before that Europe's really not known for their wood coasters. No. They never have been really. They have, like you said, they have a couple of good ones. And if something approaches the top 10 or manages to break into the top 10, then that's something. But otherwise, like, you go into this knowing that mainland Europe is not known for their wood coasters. So there's no sense in trying to pretend like something that's it's going to be there when it's most likely not going to be there. But I think those coasters that you have, they kind of fit your profile of what you like. I actually think Colossus might be the standout hit. I do tend to like El Toro. I do have a lot of the similar complaints that you do, but if you can fix those complaints, that might be a legit roller coaster. So I can't sit here and say that I will be shocked if that one doesn't enter your top 10, but you don't like El Toro to begin with. So it's going to be a tough, I think, for a lot of other normal people that love El Toro, that maybe Colossus becomes a shoo-in for a top 10. But I don't know if that's the case with you. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I think Colossus, maybe for me, might be a top 10 roller coaster, wood coaster, because As we all know, wood coasters aren't that great anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, that's why there's only 8 or 9 of them on the trip here altogether.
Sounds like a good trip.
Yeah, I would be shocked. I would be more than shocked if there was anything but these 5 rides in the post show, the recap. In the top 5, would not be surprised if the order might be completely backwards. Who knows? So many of these rides do have a lot of similarities, and they are very comparable. We did a few of them here, so I would not be surprised if all 5 of these are in a different spot when we do the recap show, and that's fine. That's why we
do them.
Rides.
That's why you write them, right?
Go to find out what rides we like and what rides we don't like, and what rides catch us by surprise, and hopefully they all catch me by surprise. That'd be real nice.
You never know. So as always, thank you for joining us here on the first episode of the Road Trip Rundown for 2019. I know you guys have been clamoring for this.
Have they?
No,
no, I've been clamoring to do it.
Everyone's forgotten we actually do this, I think. But we do. That's why you're watching it. So as always, thank you for joining us here. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
Oh, don't talk like that over there. You have to talk like this because you'll be close to France. Ha ha ha! Right on, right, warriors! Ha ha!
Auf Wiedersehen!